Hello, everyone, and welcome to Between Two Beths, our second August conversation between two Beths, Beth M and Beth Y. And hi, Beth, how are you?
Great today. How are you?
Good, good, thank you. I'm going to introduce myself first and then send it back to Beth, and then I will introduce the topic for today. I am Beth M or Beth Meek. I am a holistic nutrition and health expert turned champion for the midlife caregiver. I love helping women not lose themselves, keep themselves connected during the caregiving season because the one thing I remember about my two caregiving seasons, but my first one in particular, was I kept saying, I feel like I'm losing myself. And I was, because I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't including myself in the caregiving equation. And so that's what I do now. I do incorporate nutrition and health and things like that in it. But I just love to help caregivers understand that they can take care of themselves during this tumultuous and challenging season for many of us. So that's what I do. And so, Beth, how about you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Beth Y. I am a certified life coach. I'm a transition specialist, and I work with people going through major life changes, but I specialize in helping widowed people move from existing to fully living again. And
Hmm.
so the way I came around this was that in November 2019, my husband passed away unexpectedly on my birthday. And then just a few short months later, COVID hit, and myself, like many people out there, the world shut down, and I was in near isolation for almost 2 years. During that time frame, I read a book about coaching, and I became very intrigued. Um, and it was actually a book specific about widowed people,
Oh,
and
nice.
so I found coaching was not as mainstream as it is now. Um, but I wished I had those capabilities available to me as I was going through my journey of, grieving and being a widow. So I decided I left my job with the federal government in 2023, and I sold my property. I built a small house. I moved to be closer to my family, and then I went back to school and got certified as a life coach. So, Beth, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you. And you know what? I apologize. I always forget to share why I help caregivers and why I'm so passionate about that is because I've been a caregiver twice. The first one for my mom with Parkinson's and dementia, the second more recently for a friend recovering from a stroke. And so that's what made me passionate because that's when I really felt felt the need for something like I created. Just like Beth said, it's we both kind of have come into this very naturally because of what we didn't have when we were going through it. So, so today's topic is rebuilding daily life one habit at a time. And I think it can be somewhat different and maybe similar for both the caregiver and the widow. The first thing I wanted to talk about where caregiving is concerned is that rebuilding doesn't mean starting over necessarily. It actually is a bit more reminding yourself that you're still there, that your life is still existing and happening, even though it feels like everybody else's life, or at least one other person's life, is much more important than yours. Um, Sometimes it's that reconnecting with one small part of yourself that caregiving maybe has pushed aside. And I like to share this story that is a part of my story, and that is that I lost my job when I was caring for my mom. And I worked in a health food store. I was a manager. I went there 5 days a week, loved being there, loved helping the people. And so when I lost my job and went to help my mom, I did miss that. That was a big chunk of my life that I missed. But one thing I did when I did have the time, I didn't always have the time, but when I was out for an errand or whatever, I would stop in at a health food store and I would browse. And yes, I would face and and move things around sometimes because that's what I just naturally did. But I would look at the supplements or I would look at things to see if I recognized them, bring that familiarity back. Sometimes I did buy something healthy because that too reminded me of who I was. I was a healthy eater, things like that. So that familiarness of doing that was actually comforting. And that environment actually made me realize that that part of me was still there. So, that part of rebuilding, that one little habit, and it wasn't a daily habit for sure, but that one little habit really meant a lot to me. And so that kind of kept that alive for me. So, Beth, tell me how that kind of relates to a widowhood.
Well, I think, you talked about habits and, holding on to that part of you from before your time of being a caregiver. As a widow, you know, those habits can be reminders, right?
Yes.
Your routines have changed. Everything has changed.
Yes.
And so, holding on to those habits can be, some can be good, depending what the habit is,
Yeah.
but others can also be a little unhealthy,
Yes. I
right?
can see that.
Um, so one of the things I started doing, as I said, shortly after my husband died, you know, COVID hit.
Yeah.
I was in a 825 square foot condo. Um, and so one of the habits that I did adopt was, I should probably get back to it, even though I've moved, but because I didn't get, I felt like I felt very stifled,
Oh,
right? I felt very confined.
yes.
And it was both physical, a small space,
Hmm.
and it was also, all these emotions and,
Yeah.
you know, that, you know, that you're feeling and you're trying to work through. But one of the habits I did adopt was um, outdoor space became my friend. And so there was this park that I could walk to.
Mm.
So I would time it, so when I was in the building and to get out of the building, of course, I wore the mask, but I would go and probably 3 or 4 times a week, I would do a 2 mile trek just to get outside,
Yeah.
get fresh air, get some vitamin D,
Mm.
um, and get outside, out, to kind of escape the four walls that I felt like were closing in on me.
Yes.
And once I recognized that, um, it became monumental.
Yes.
Um, so, you know, it, it doesn't, it wasn't a big step,
Yeah.
but it created momentum,
Yeah.
right? And it started it was a catalyst for other things.
Absolutely.
Um, and I really think in part it helped with my mental state, obviously,
Absolutely.
but two, I think doing that for me and incorporating that in my life in a way helped boost my confidence,
Ah,
if that can make sense.
yeah.
Um, it was a change up, even though it was a routine, but it wasn't a routine from before,
Yes.
right? And the daily routines I was in, I would get up, I was had a little den, not a cloffice. Remember that term came about during COVID. But my life was very regimented,
I see.
um, based on the fact that, you know, vaccines weren't out yet. It wasn't healthy and I was immunocompromised. And so, you know, other habits that I had started doing was meditation.
I see. Yeah.
And that became like almost spiritually healing,
Hmm.
is the way I can say it. So, Beth, your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, one thing that hit me while you were talking, Beth, especially when you started, was that habits, for many habits, possibly for yourself and others like yourself, might be a detriment to your healing process, the healing. Whereas, and what I'm always intrigued by when you and I sit down to talk is, and I know Beth, you've said this before to our audience, we don't talk about what we're going to talk about. We each have a few talking points and we know the topics, but we don't talk or script anything. But what I was intrigued by is that habits for the caregiver and habits in light of how what we're talking about for the widow could be very very different and could
Yeah.
produce very different outcomes for the caregiver. I'm talking about rebuilding some habits, one habit at a time, some daily things that are promoting your self-care and keeping yourself connected in here, during this process. And you're talking about habits that really need to rebuild who you are, some habits that aren't good to keep going because they're reminders and they bring back memories or, whatever, and some habits that maybe are. So I was kind of intrigued by that. And one thing, then one of my next thoughts was about habits being anchors. Now, I'm a habit stacker. I love talking about stacking habits, right? Things that you already do, because that's one way in building a business as well as in taking care of yourself that it's easier to incorporate something new that you want to do, whether it's in your business or, in taking care of yourself or whatever, when it's attached to something you already do automatically. What are some of those things you automatically do? And the thing that I decided to talk about today or mention that I do automatically is brush my teeth. Not everybody does that, and no judgment. That's what I do. I get up in the morning. It's not the first thing I do, but I was thinking, before I even go on a Zoom call, I like to brush my teeth. Not that you can smell my breath, not that you see my teeth, but it just makes me feel like I'm ready and it makes me feel presentable or something. I don't know. I probably go without a shower, put a baseball cap on, but I would brush my teeth. So it's that kind of thing. And for caregivers, when you're trying to take care of yourself, brushing your teeth might be difficult to do. But if it's one of those habits that you do all the time, anchor something else, whether it's stepping outside or grabbing a cup of tea or reading a page of a book, right? Associate one with the other, and that makes habit stacking. That's what that's called. It makes that easier to incorporate that self-care habit, that
Yeah.
way of taking care of yourself, that way of rebuilding what you want to be living for yourself, at one habit at a time. Now, for widows, you can do that same thing. It's those habits that you have to choose differently, right?
Yeah.
So,
But
Beth, what do you think about that? Yeah.
I think also, maybe in the caregiving role as well, when you're in the thick of it, some of the habits, but I know when you're first widowed, right? Some of the habits that you start incorporating are somewhat tactical.
Yes.
Okay, you're in survival mode,
Yes.
right? So what is it that I can do to help me just, you know,
Survive.
yeah. And I think over time, at least I know for myself, they start becoming more strategic and more spiritual. And what I mean by that is, I got to the point where I realized that if I started my day off with good thoughts,
Mm.
and I started writing it down every day on a post-it note, and I would put
Yes.
it on on my screen on my monitor.
Yes.
And then I started keeping a journal of just practicing gratitude.
Yeah.
Um, and then I started with, setting like one achievable goal.
Yeah.
And that might have been um, something personally for me. Like, what is one thing I'm going to do for me? I'm going to instill this week. And then he was focusing on progress, but not perfection, because we're human. We're not perfect,
Yeah.
right? And there are times that, you I talked about the walk,
Yeah.
and there were times where, and my goal was 3 to 4 times a week. And there were times I just didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's times when you can give yourself permission to take a break.
Yeah.
But there's also times where sometimes you need to push forward
Yeah. Push
and you
yourself
need
to
to
do it.
know where that balance is.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy. So, um, what we can tell people, what I can tell people is, um, when you become a widow, there's absolutely no going back. There's only moving forward.
Yeah. True.
Um, the life you had ended
Yeah.
when your spouse passed away. But the goal is to build a meaningful new one.
Yes.
Yeah, go out and find what it is that gives you joy. Bridge the gap between surviving and thriving,
Yes.
right? It's important.
Yes.
You have, I said this one other time on one of these episodes where I guess a little bit less than a year after my husband died, my brother-in-law said to me, sweetie, you got a lot of life yet to live. Go live it.
Yeah.
So, figure out those habits that support healing for you. And they look different for
Yes.
everybody,
Yes.
right? And embrace them. So
Absolutely.
thoughts on that, Beth?
Absolutely. I think that's wonderful. And I've said it before that your brother-in-law gave you a wonderful gift by telling you that. So that's amazing. And it's true. Go out and find habits that are healing for you. And that can be true for caregivers as well. Whatever makes you feel like you still develop that habit, or a habit that helps you feel like that, like I did. It wasn't ideal. I mean, I wasn't going to be working at that health food store, and came back and got my job back and worked at a health food store again. But whatever bridges that gap, to really being what you want. Maybe you love a certain sport and you can't play the sport while you're caregiving or whatever. Watch it on TV, or pass a park, go with your loved one and pass a park and watch the Little League baseball game or whatever, that type of thing. It might not be the ideal circumstance, but it's a good fill in. It's a good familiar. And I love that word. Familiar is comfortable, right? So something that makes you feel familiar and like like yourself. Um, yeah, I think that's a great place to stop, Beth. Thank you for that conversation. Always thank you for what you bring to this. I love that we can talk about seemingly two different areas and two different audiences, I should say, but about the same topic, and really come up with a lot of similarities and definitely
Yeah.
some differences. So thank you. And everybody, thank you for joining today. You can reach me at my website, which is below www.bethmecoach.com. And there's an email on there or a bunch of other stuff that you might want to look at. And Beth, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can reach me at email Beth at beyondcoachingbybeth.com or beyondcoachingbybeth.com. Um, I offer group sessions, I offer one-on-ones. Um, and if you have any topics you would like to
Oh,
hear us
yes.
discuss, please feel free to reach out to us. We also welcome any shares, likes, anything along those lines. Neither one of us advertise. So we do build our business through events like this, word of mouth, referrals, social media, et cetera, et cetera. And in closing, I will say every habit that you incorporate is a vote for the person you're becoming. That's it.
Amen.
Bye,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.